Beyond the Clef is presented by Director's Choice.
Welcome to Beyond the Clef, going further with your music program. I'm joined by my special guest from the other side of the world, from Australia, Katie Wardrobe. How are you doing, Katie?
Good, thank you. It's around midday here, so the time change is not too bad for once. It's a very nice thing. I did my own interview with someone this morning at 6 a.m., which was a bit of a shock to my system, but this is a much nicer time to chat.
Yeah, well, it's of course nighttime here, end of the workday, so it's been a chore to try to get all our technical stuff set up, and I appreciate you being so nice and letting me test a few of our video switchers that we haven't been able to do this actually live production yet. But let's get to talking about what you've been doing. You are the owner of Midnight Music. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so it's my business which I've had going for quite some time. I started the business name up in the year 2000, and back then I was doing a lot of copying and arranging work for people, and over time it changed a little bit. So I was happy that I chose this generic name for the business because it meant that it could morph into other things. But my focus these days is really helping people, teachers in particular, with using technology in education. So lesson plans and tutorials and lots of things like that. And it's just been great. I run a lot of live workshops and have an online community where I help people out too. And it's just so nice to be able to help people out and see a little bit of a success with technology, because a lot of people are kind of afraid of it.
Yeah, well, that's definitely been me today, as you've experienced. But I actually met you a couple years ago. You went to the Time Convention part of TMEA, I think it was, and I think you were the special guest there, if I'm not mistaken. This has been a couple years now, and I ended up a friend of mine, Marianne White, who has been on the program before, and she is the creator of thatflippinbanddirector.com. And so she pulled me in and said, hey, you got to see this lady. She's really cool. And one of the ideas that I got from you was I had a set of iPads, and I morphed some ideas that you have. So don't take this as audience. Don't take this as this is what she does all the time. But I got the idea and got the lesson plan to kind of take a line out of our Essential Elements book, our little beginner book, and then what I ended up doing is I had to teach the kids to learn the line, and of course they had to learn it very well, and without messing up the tempo, without messing up the notes, anything like that, doing a good volume. Then they had to record themselves on their iPad and in GarageBand. And so when they did that, then we taught them 12-bar blues and section off. So we had to teach them chords, and then we had to teach them all how to use GarageBand, and then we added on the different layers, and they got to add on drum tracks and backup tracks. And so that's kind of a little bit about what you do with some of your lesson plans, your resources. Can you tell me a little bit more about that and just say, no, that's not what I do at all? I don't know.
Yeah,
this guy doesn't know what he's talking about.
You got it perfect. You got it perfect. It was great actually to go to that, to Texas and to be at that convention, because it's crazy big compared to any of the conventions or conferences that we have in Australia. So it was so nice to see like hundreds of people in a breakout session instead of 20 people in a breakout session. But yeah, you're right. Totally right. I think for me, the focus is always using what you have and starting off really, really simple. So that 12-bar blues project, basically there's a sorry, can you hear the background noise? I'm so sorry, I've just broken it. There's a big construction thing going on next door, so they've just decided to start up. Anyway,
it's not. We can barely hear it. It's fine. Thank you. There's a lot of construction here in Texas, so we get it. We get it.
Yeah, so the 12-bar blues project has been a really popular one with lots of teachers. It's one of the ones I've got for free on my website, which is great. And basically, you can take a 12-bar blues and put it together in an app. It doesn't have to be GarageBand, but anything you've got at hand, and kind of transform it in some ways. So the blues doesn't necessarily have to be in a blues style. You could use the same chord sequence and get kids improvising with the blues scale, but you might apply a country and western theme or something else. So you can kind of do really simple things, I think, with what you've got, just to put a different aspect on the sorts of things that you're teaching all the
I
time
think
and apply the technology.
it's very interesting to have oboe mixed with
Yeah.
what a kid comes up with was maybe like a rock guitar and then like
Yeah.
cellos, and it ends up getting very creative, but that's okay. These are learning about music and
Yeah.
form and style and everything.
And I love that. I love that sort of different approach to things, and it makes you smile. It makes it a little bit humorous or interesting for the kids instead of maybe being, everybody doing the same thing and it's a bit dry some of the time. So yeah, my focus is often, I don't know, teaching people simple ways to integrate technology and hopefully that it's not too scary. Because that's the thing I find with a lot of teachers is that they haven't had the background, with technology, maybe while they were doing their teaching degree. And even for younger teachers, there's not necessarily a correlation between tech comfort and younger people and maybe people my age and older. There's not that correlation there of, oh, well, younger people are, of course, more tech savvy. I don't find that so much. It's more about motivation to learn and wanting to know what you can do with the technology. So, yeah, so I like lots of practical ideas and tutorials and lesson plans and small ways to integrate tech throughout the year, or bigger projects as well. That's generally my focus.
So when you're talking about the projects that you're going through, and when you're talking about the lesson plans, as I'm looking through your site, you have some stuff that's free, and then you have some stuff that's a pay and kind of either subscription or the year. Okay, so me as the individual teacher, tell me what I can get out of both, and maybe what resources you have on the paid site that we can't see yet.
Yeah. So the free content on the site, I really started because I started off just running live workshops here in Australia and in Melbourne, first of all, where I live, and then kind of a bit further beyond that, so interstate in Australia, and then branching out internationally a little bit too. And at first, I started the blog on my website because I found I was giving the same information a lot of the time over and over and over and over. And I thought there must be a better way. And it makes a lot more sense to put it on a website where people can find it. And that's kind of grown over time. And now I deliberately put stuff on, fairly regularly so that, that it's helping out people. And it's good for the business, obviously, too, because there's content going onto the website all the time. So that's the free component. There's blog posts that come out each week or podcast episodes. It's usually one or the other. The podcast I'm trying to do every week, but then there's extra blog posts in between. And lots of free downloads and that sort of thing, tutorials and lesson plans and so on. But the paid side of things, the workshops that I was running, there was a lot of people contacting me from other places, like the States in particular, saying, are you going to come and ever run workshops here? We'd love to learn from you too. And I kind of thought, I must get into the online learning space because this seemed to be the perfect solution really for reaching other people and helping people out in different places. And so I started doing a series of live online courses. I think that was back in 2012 or so. And they went really well, but the only issue was that it was very hard to find a time that works for everybody in the world. So I was running them in the evening for me here, and that was maybe 3 a.m. in the morning for some people in the States or in England. And, there's no one ideal time. And so it ended up being recorded online courses which were available at any time. And then that kind of morphed into, let's just put everything into this one online community space where people can access all of the courses that I have at any time that works for them throughout the year. And so it's a subscription model essentially. So people can join up for a year. The cost works out to be equivalent to a couple of days of live professional development for a whole year's worth of access. So it just made a lot more sense to me. There's also that community kind of aspect to it too, where people can talk to me and ask questions. And I've got a guy, Martin, who helps me out in there too, answering questions. And that's really, really useful because people can say, hey, I've got an iPad and I've got a band and I want to do this sort of thing with them. How do you suggest going about that? Or, I've got a set of iPads that I can use, or Chromebooks, or, a Mac lab that I've got access to, and what do you suggest I can do with that? So that's just been really fun. And it's funny because, we have such a different system over here in Australia. We're much closer to the UK education setup, I think, where we have elementary, which we call primary school, and that's K through 6. And then we have secondary school, which is 7 to 12. But our teachers still call middle school, and that's, basically known to be grade 5 to 8 in the middle there. But we don't have sort of separate campuses as such for those different areas. Basically, it's K to 6 and 7 to 12 are generally, each separate. That's the separation there. And yeah, so the things that I'm doing, the bulk of the things that I have are for that middle school through to year 12 kind of area. And then I've got quite a bit of stuff which is elementary, like K to 4 sort of area. And I'm going to build that out a little bit. I can see lots of opportunities there, but it's just, it's hard to kind of create everything I want to create all the time. I've always got a to-do list, which is so long. But yeah, there's a lot of ideas. And most of the things that I've been doing over time are very adaptable. So I often have a lesson plan and there's suggestions for if you've got young students, you can do it this way, and have a different expectation from the students is often the thing, rather than changing the project. The project can stay the same. It's just that you would carry it out differently for younger students and then for middle students and then for older students. And that actually helps because sometimes even within one of those groups you'll have, different levels of student ability, and you can differentiate depending on who you're working with. But I found that's worked quite well. Just sort of changing the approach but keeping the project or the approach the same, the lesson the same.
Been talking about is how you like to make things simple and start there, and people can start in a small scale but then build up. And just like Marianne White, who was on this podcast before, from thatflippingbanddirector.com, she first started in telling me, and she was talking about flipping her classroom, and I was like, well, that's just too much. I'm going to have to plan out my whole curriculum and try to figure all that out. I don't have that much time, but really flipping the classroom was just doing something and setting something at home, and it might just be a little bit, and it might just be setting a video or setting this one little lesson, but it's not the whole everything you have to do. So tell me a little bit about how in your lessons you like to scale everything, and what I could do if I don't have a one-to-one classroom, or if I don't have all these devices. Maybe I just have a computer and a projector or my own personal device.
Yeah. So yeah, it's good, and I've often taken that approach. Like a number of the lessons, particularly the later ones that I'm putting in there, actually have a section which says if you have just one device, you can do this lesson, and here are the ways. Yeah, here are the ways you can do it. And then I have a section for a number of them which say if you've got multiple devices for students, and that might not even be one, it might one each. It might be you've got one between 2 or one between 3. Here are the parts of the lesson where you could break the students off into groups or individual, and they can work on a thing by themselves, But, for the band orchestra choir kind of teachers, one computer or one tablet, iPad or Android device, you can still do so much, I think, with those. And even things like I often do some quick win type things in workshops with ensemble directors where, we talk about things like making scales or warm-ups a little bit more interesting or fun. So if you're working with a band method book and you've got scales that the kids are going to do all together as a group, as a, sort of a warm-up thing, maybe you get out your iPad and you open up GarageBand and you literally press the button and start the smart drums up in some kind of funky rhythm. And you can alter the tempo, make it nice and slow enough for the kids, and they can do the scale or warm-up exercise along with that instead. And they might be playing along with a Latin theme for one go through, and then they might do a rock theme for the next one. And you could even get one of the kids to come up and choose the next rhythmic pattern that they're going to do. But things like that, where you've just got the one device, plug it into speakers. You don't even really need that showing on the data projector as such, There's an app which I love, a website actually, which is called Groove Pizza. and it works on every device. It's so good because it works across all platforms. So you can open it on the iPad or a Chromebook or a Mac or a PC. And it is a drum sequencer in the shape of a pizza, as you do. And so it's got that circular rhythm thing. It's really
Love
great
pizza.
to show that. Yeah, always exactly. No one can do without more pizza in their life. But you can open that up and the kids can actually visually see a one bar pattern or one measure pattern on the screen. And, you might use it as an accompaniment thing, but you might also do rhythmic practice with the kids where perhaps you bring it up and they need to clap the outer circle of the pizza, which is the kick drum part, or maybe another part of the ensemble are going to clap the inner circle, which is like the hi-hat part. And it's kind of cool. It's really easy to set up and use as a teacher. You can kind of just open it and get it going straight away. So I love little things like that, Note naming apps and software is another great thing to do as a group with students. Even better if you can do it individually, but still works really well with the group. Things like Staff Wars, a number of people I know use that already. Great Star Wars theme. Here you go. Here's for your Star Wars theme. Star Wars theme software. Yeah. Yeah. Before we started, David and I were laughing because C3PO in the background was a little bit crooked and it was going to really bug us through the whole thing. So we had to get up and shift it. He's good now. Star Wars is a great one. It's been going strong for many years, and I love that app. It's great to have it on the board, and kids can identify notes as they're coming through, flying through with the space theme, and they get shot by a space, what do you call it, a spaceship every time they get the note correct. So yeah, that's some of my favourite things, and like you said, just using your own device to do flipped classroom thing. The thing I like about the flipped classroom is recording yourself as the teacher teaching a concept or maybe a part in an orchestral piece that you're doing or a band piece that you're doing, and the ability that the kids have to go back and watch that over and over if they need to in their own time, revise it, do it over and get that sort of hands-on help from you without you being actually there in the room. That's such a great thing, such a great way to learn. So yeah, I think that sort of thing is really good. If you've got multiple devices, though, even better because you can get the kids sort of doing things a bit more hands-on.
So you have your website, and the website is midnightmusic.com.au. You got to have the .au for Australia in there. And then you have your podcast on there too. So tell me a little bit about your podcast.
Yeah, so I started that earlier this year. I should have probably started the previous year. I didn't want to start it until I knew I could do it consistently. So I really didn't want to start it and then, have one episode and then 3 weeks goes by and then another episode. I wanted to try and make sure I could do it pretty much every week. So it's been roughly that all year. There's been a couple of weeks that I've missed due to whatever circumstances. But yeah, I really wanted to start the podcast. I thought there's a few podcasts. I mean, you would know this too because you've got a music education podcast. But yeah, I just found that a lot of the music education ones that were out there, there wasn't many that were music tech education.
Yeah, it's been really nice. It's nice actually to how many people I've gotten to meet, and of course you have an international setting, so getting to meet everybody across the world. And I've been on your podcast, and it's been really exciting for me as well. So now, you have guests, before we recording, I just find this a little interesting. Tell me about your situation in Australia, your music education system compared to what we have, because right now, most everywhere kind of has different things, but we have elementary K through 5, middle school 6 through 8, and then high school 9 through 12. And of course, in there's also, intermediate sometimes, or ninth grade centers, or junior highs and whatnot. But what do you guys do?
I might be discussing great iPad apps for the elementary classroom, or it might be a recent episode was tips on basic audio editing skills actually for music teachers, which I think it's just so good if you've got some basic audio editing skills. There's so much you can do with it, but not a lot of people use it very often. So I ran through some tips in that episode. And then other episodes are interviews like the one we're doing today, where I get a guest on and they talk about what they're doing with technology in whichever education setting they're in. And it's been great. So good to chat and meet other people, I think,
Yeah, it's
talk to
been
other
really
people.
nice. It's nice actually to how many people I've gotten to meet, and of course you have an international setting, so getting to meet everybody across the world, and I've been on your podcast, and it's been really exciting for me as well. So now before we were recording, I just find this a little interesting. Tell me about your situation in Australia and your music education system compared to what we have. Because right now, most everywhere kind of has different things, but we have elementary K through 5, middle school 6 through 8, and then high school 9 through 12. And of course, in there's also intermediate sometimes, or ninth grade centers, or junior highs and whatnot. But what do you guys do?
No, so yeah, I was saying that our system's quite different. Our band, orchestra, and choir aspect, of like kids doing that at our schools, those things are extracurricular activities, which is it's just completely opposite to what happens in the States, where that's the core subject. You have class time carved out for those topic areas, those subjects, and so I know that your kids go to band class and they will do it's rehearsing, but there might be other aspects of what they're doing. They're doing some scales and refining what you do on your instrument, whereas that doesn't happen at all in Australia, really. For the most part, our class time is more like your general music classes. So the group of kids go, and it's compulsory up to our grade 8 in Australia that music is a part of the curriculum. It's varying levels of quality depending on what school you're at and so on, but basically until grade 8. And then after that, it's an elective subject. But our compulsory ones are basically general music classroom. So it's an appreciation subject, it's listening, it's learning to play, but it's instruments that anyone can play, I suppose, more like classroom instruments and things like that. And the band, orchestra, choir rehearsals have to get shoehorned into lunch times or after school or before school as rehearsal times. And so when I talk to Aussie teachers and say, in the States, their system is that this is class time, and they're like blown away by that. They're like, what? They get to rehearse during the day? Like, it's really unusual. And so, yeah, it's just a really different approach. Like for our kids that are learning an instrument privately, whether that's winds or brass or strings or piano or singing or whatever, those lessons often take place during class time, but they do get pulled out of the class to attend those lessons. And that could be any class. It could be leaving English class or maths class or whatever. And then, yeah, the band, orchestra and choir or any other ensemble is basically this extracurricular thing. And so therefore it's a really pushed, it's the teachers who run those ensembles are so pushed for rehearsal time. And I'm always amazed when, great performances happen because you're often trying to get kids to rehearsal at 7:30 in the morning or 7 o'clock in the morning, and they're not that happy to do that all the time.
Well, Katie, thank you so much for being on the program. You've been a great guest. Katie Wardrobe is at Midnight Music. That's midnightmusic.com.au.
.com.au.
And thank you so much for being on.
Yeah, it'd be great. And I'm looking forward. I'm getting back to Texas to TMEA next year, so I'm looking forward to being there for that. And I'm running one session at least, I think. So that'll be great. It's such a great convention. I know you call it convention there, and so much bigger than anything we have here. So I'm really excited. I'll be bringing my microphone and getting some podcast interviews done, hopefully.
We'll have to get you on the program when you're here. Well, thanks again. And again, Katie Wardrobe from Midnight Music. And thanks everybody for joining us on Beyond the Clef.